Welcome to Sleepy SpongeBob!
Sometimes the greatest mysteries are not hidden in galaxies far away, but in the small, peculiar corners of a world we think we already know. Down in the quiet hum of the sea, in a place filled with laughter, odd friendships, and simple joys, there lingers a question no one ever truly answers. A secret that hums like a lullaby beneath the waves. Tonight, we're not here to solve it, not really, but to drift through its story the way one drifts into a dream.
Because sometimes mysteries are not meant to be solved.
They are meant to be felt. And before we begin, I want you to know we're glad you're here. We care about you more than you know. This time is for you and only for you. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you listening from and what time is it there? Now let's begin. They say that the ocean keeps more secrets than it ever shares. It holds them in the curves of its tides, in the hush of its midnight swells, and in the way it never stops moving, as though restless with memory. If you listen long enough, you may hear one of those secrets drift toward you. Not loudly, not urgently, but gently, as if it always belonged to you. This story begins with such a whisper. It was not shouted nor carved into stone. It was carried instead on a current, like a lullaby meant for no one and everyone at once. Beneath the laughter and the clinking plates of a small seaside restaurant, beneath the shadows of coral and the swaying kelp, there was a formula. A recipe, hidden but ever present, woven into the very rhythm of a town called Bikini Bottom. The funny thing about mysteries is that they are rarely about the object itself. The formula, people spoke of it with awe, as if it were made of golden ink and glowing parchment. Yet what people truly wondered about was not the taste of the patties, nor the ingredients themselves, but why this one secret mattered so much. Why a single scrap of knowledge could bind together the lives of an entire community. No one had ever seen the recipe, not even those who worked closest to it. Still, it shaped them all. Children spoke of it in hushed voices while playing by the shore. Old sailors muttered about it after a drink, claiming it must contain something enchanted, something that kept them young. And somewhere, in the soft corner of every heart, the question lingered. What makes the familiar so comforting, so irreplaceable? On the surface, the answer seemed simple. It was just a sandwich. Bread, a patty, perhaps a pickle, perhaps not. But beneath the surface, beneath the very waves that cradled Bikini Bottom, something larger stirred. For in every secret there is an origin. And the origin of this formula was strange, tender, and quietly woven into the life of one small sponge. SpongeBob SquarePants did not enter the world with the burden of knowing, nor with the ambition of guarding mysteries. He arrived instead with a laugh that bubbled like spring water, with eyes that looked upon everything as though it was both new and sacred. From the very beginning, he had a way of finding wonder in the smallest of things. A bubble's glimmer, a jellyfish's hum, the way a spatula fit into his hand, as if it had been waiting for him all along. The sea is vast, but SpongeBob's world was small. He lived in a pineapple house that tilted ever so slightly with the currents, a place warm with simple comforts. Each morning he woke as though the day itself had been written just for him. He did not know yet how strange this was, how most hearts do not hum with such effortless joy. He only knew that the sun, faint though it was beneath the water, seemed to shine brighter on days when he smiled. And so it was, in his earliest years, that he became part of a rhythm. The Krusty Krab was not simply a restaurant to him. It was a stage, a song, a sanctuary. The sound of sizzling grills was music. The scent of fried patties was a hymn. And the laughter of customers, faint and fleeting, felt like applause. Even before he had mastered the art of flipping, even before he had earned the trust of Mr. Krabs, he sensed that this place was more than walls and tables. It was a heartbeat, one that pulsed with a secret he could not name. People often wondered why he cared so much. To SpongeBob, it was never about money, never about glory, never even about being the best. It was about something quieter, something softer. The way the act of making food carried love without words. The way a simple meal could make someone stay a little longer, laugh a little easier, remember a little more sweetly. That was the real magic he felt each day, though he did not yet know to call it magic. Still, there were moments when he would pause, spatula in hand, and glance toward the locked office where Mr. Krabs kept the formula. He would tilt his head, not with suspicion, but with childlike curiosity. He didn't need to know what was inside. And yet, the mystery tugged at him, not because he wanted to solve it, but because he could feel that it was connected somehow to the warmth he carried in his chest. The ocean had given him many gifts: patience, laughter, resilience, but perhaps its greatest gift was this: a gentle awareness that some questions are more beautiful when left unanswered. And yet, as he walked home each evening, SpongeBob would sometimes catch himself humming a tune he did not recognize.
A lullaby the sea seemed to teach him.
It was soft, almost absent-minded, like the way waves curl and fall without thinking. Perhaps it was the ocean's way of reminding him, there is a story here, deeper than you know. Others noticed the pull of the formula as well. Plankton, for one, felt it in a different way. Sharp, gnawing, unrelenting. To him, the secret was proof that life had cheated him, that joy was always just beyond his grasp. And though his hunger would one day bring him back again and again to the locked door, in those early days, SpongeBob only saw him as another small creature longing for something unseen. Life in Bikini Bottom was simple, and yet it was never ordinary. Every character, every corner of that world seemed shaped by the unseen glow of the secret, and perhaps that is why the legend grew. Not because people truly believed it could be stolen, but because they sensed it was not really a formula at all. It was a thread weaving them together, so the whisper beneath the waves continued. Some heard it as a challenge, others heard it as temptation, but SpongeBob in his innocence heard it as comfort. He did not need to hold the secret in his hands. He only needed to live it, one smile, one patty, one gentle act of kindness at a time. That was the strange origin of the tale we now tell, not of an ancient scroll or a forgotten spell, but of a boy made of sponge who grew up listening to the ocean sing of mysteries too soft to be solved. And if you listen closely,
even now you may hear it too. A hush, a hum, a secret moving with the tide.
it doesn't matter if you never know its ingredients. What matters is that it soothes you like a bedtime story sung by the sea, and so the whisper continues, waiting, always waiting for hearts gentle enough to he had always felt that his world was stitched together by soft threads, threads that shimmered just beyond his reach, yet kept everything from unraveling. The whisper of the formula was one of those threads, a hum in the background of his days, something he did not chase but could never quite ignore. Still, SpongeBob's life was not built upon secrets. It was built upon mornings that seemed to smile at him, afternoons filled with laughter, and nights when the ocean itself seemed to tuck him in. He carried within him a heart too gentle to guard against wonder. When SpongeBob was younger, before the Krusty Krab became his second home, he was simply a boy made of sponges, elastic, absorbent, wide-eyed. He spent his earliest years wandering through the sandy streets of Bikini Bottom, noticing things that others walked past. A seashell half buried in the sand was, to him, a treasure chest. A jellyfish hovering above the meadow was not a creature to be feared, but a lantern sent to light his way. Even the way bubbles rose from the seafloor fascinated him, as though the ocean was sighing softly, breathing stories into the water. He had a peculiar gift, though he never thought of it as a gift. His body could stretch, bend, fold in on itself, as if made not of flesh, but of possibility. Other children teased him sometimes for his oddity, calling him floppy or strange, but SpongeBob only laughed, for he saw no shame in being different. In time, that very difference became a reflection of his spirit, able to bend without breaking, to hold more than most, to soak in both joy and sorrow without ever losing his shape. His parents worried, in their quiet way, that he was too soft for the world. He trusted too easily, forgave too quickly, cared too deeply. They wondered if such a heart could survive in a place as
unpredictable as the ocean.
Yet even they, watching him from their modest home, could not deny that the boy's gentleness seemed to draw light toward him, like coral attracts fish, like warmth attracts life. SpongeBob's childhood was marked by small rituals, moments that carved themselves into the rhythm of his being. He would rise early to watch the faint sun trickle through the waves, its beams stretching down like soft fingers brushing the sea floor. He would hum as he brushed his teeth, hum as he packed a small lunch, hum even as he tripped over his shoelaces. He always seemed to be humming, as though his heart had a melody of its own and could not keep silent. It was during those years that he met Patrick. At first, their friendship was simple, stitched together by shared boredom and silly games, but over time it deepened into something steady, something anchoring. Patrick was a starfish of few thoughts but endless loyalty. He did not question SpongeBob's strangeness, nor did he tire of his boundless energy. Instead, he absorbed it, mirrored it, and in his slow, steady way taught SpongeBob that companionship did not always require words. Sometimes it was enough to sit together saying nothing, watching the jellyfish drift above like floating lanterns. Their bond gave SpongeBob something he had not realized he needed, the assurance that he was not alone in his softness. If Patrick accepted him without question, then perhaps the world could too. It was a quiet revelation, but one that shaped him as surely as the tides shaped the sand. As he grew, SpongeBob's curiosity began to settle on the Krusty Krab. The building seemed ordinary to most, wooden planks, a mast-like sign, a grill that sizzled. But to him it shimmered with unseen magic. He would linger outside, pressing his face to the glass, watching Mr. Krabs shuffle behind the counter with his broad claws and booming laugh. He would inhale the scent of patties on the grill and feel something inside him stir, something that told him his path was hidden in that kitchen. When at last he was old enough to ask for work, he did so not with the ambition of one seeking fortune, but with the eagerness of one seeking purpose. Mr. Krabs, skeptical at first, doubted that this strange, spongy boy could handle the heat of the kitchen. But SpongeBob's heart burned with a quiet certainty. He had spent years watching, listening, learning, even without meaning to. Every hiss of the fryer, every scrape of the spatula, every burst of laughter from a satisfied customer had written itself into him. His first day at the Krusty Krab was a blur of nervous joy. He flipped patties with clumsy enthusiasm, his body bending and twisting in ways that startled the other employees. And yet, even through his mistakes, something undeniable shone through. He worked not with his hands alone, but with his heart. Each patty he cooked seemed to carry a small blessing, an unspoken wish that the one who ate it would feel comfort, would feel whole. By the end of that first shift, Mr. Krabs no longer doubted. He saw in SpongeBob what few others had, a rare devotion, a joy too pure to be faked. And though he never said it aloud, Mr. Krabs felt a spark of pride, the kind a father might feel when seeing his child discover their calling. But SpongeBob himself did not think of it as destiny. To him, it was simply love. Love for the sizzle of the grill, love for the rhythm of the spatula, love for the way food brought people together. He did not yet understand how deeply the formula was tied to his work, how it pulsed in the background of every patty he made. All he knew was that he felt at home. Still, there were moments, in the quiet after closing, when he would find himself alone in the dim restaurant, the chairs stacked on tables, the grill cooling in the shadows, and the faint creak of the locked office door. In those moments, he would stand still, listening. Sometimes he thought he could hear it, the whisper of the formula, a soft hum that seemed to seep through the walls. Not words, not instructions, but something gentler, a presence, a comfort, like a lullaby. He never tried to open the door. He never even asked Mr. Krabs what lay inside. For SpongeBob, the mystery was enough. It was not about having or knowing. It was about feeling. And what he felt in those quiet moments was that the secret was not locked away in parchment. It was alive, flowing through him, through every smile he gave, every patty he flipped, every kindness he offered. In time, that truth would become clearer. But for now, he was only beginning his journey, still a boy made of sponges, still a child of wonder, standing at the threshold of something far larger than himself. The ocean had given him laughter, friendship, and purpose. Soon, it would give him the quiet wisdom that mysteries are not always meant to be solved, but lived, and somewhere, in the silence of the locked office, the whisper stirred again, waiting for him to grow into its meaning. The Krusty Krab soon became more than a workplace for SpongeBob. It became a second skin, a rhythm that stitched itself into every part of his being. The hum of the fryer and the soft scrape of the spatula against the grill were not just sounds anymore, they were music, simple, steady, and oddly soothing. To others, it was noise, background clatter, the common soundscape of a restaurant. But to SpongeBob, it was a song. And he sang it with his hands, with his laughter, with the very way he moved around the kitchen. Each patty he flipped seemed to rise and fall in time with his heartbeat. The sizzle of grease was a harmony, the steam rising like notes that vanished into the air. Even the clang of a dropped utensil or the creak of the old wooden floorboards felt like percussion in an invisible orchestra. He often hummed along without realizing it, a gentle melody that slipped into the air as naturally as bubbles drift upward. It wasn't the kind of song that asked to be noticed. It was the kind of song that worked quietly in the background, the kind you only missed once it was gone. The customers noticed, though they couldn't name it. They came for the food, yes, but something else brought them back again and again. It was the way each meal felt personal, as though it carried not just flavor, but affection. No one could quite explain it. They only knew that biting into a Krabby Patty after a long day felt like stepping briefly into sunlight, even deep under the sea. SpongeBob didn't see it as extraordinary. For him, it was simply what happened when you loved what you did, when you poured your joy into something small and ordinary until it shimmered. But joy, no matter how gentle, always casts a shadow. SpongeBob's song carried through the town, and there was one who heard it differently. To Plankton, the sizzle of the grill was not music, it was torment. Each satisfied laugh from a customer outside his lonely restaurant struck him like a drumbeat, reminding him of what he lacked. Every patty flipped was another reminder that the formula he craved remained just out of reach. And though SpongeBob never thought of himself as a rival, to Plankton he became the living embodiment of everything he wanted but could not have: belonging, joy, and a place in the hearts of others. Yet SpongeBob never sang his song for competition. He sang because he couldn't help it, because the work felt like breathing, because the Krusty Krab was not a place of business but of ritual. To SpongeBob, cooking was less about food and more about care. Each patty was a small act of kindness, a quiet offering to the world. He never thought about the secret recipe itself. He never felt the need to peer too closely at the mystery locked away in Mr. Krabs' office. What mattered to him was not the paper or the ink of the formula, but the warmth it created when transformed into something you could taste, hold, and share. He often stayed late, even when the last customer had gone and the lights had dimmed. The hush of the empty restaurant wrapped around him like a blanket. In that quiet, the echoes of the day lingered, the laughter of friends, the satisfied sighs of strangers, the rhythm of his own footsteps moving across the worn floorboards. He would clean the tables with a kind of reverence, as though each stain told a story, each crumb carried a memory. Sometimes, when the world was still, he felt the ocean lean in closer, as though listening to the small song of a sponge who loved too deeply. And then there was Mr. Krabs. To many, he was nothing more than a greedy old crab, pinching pennies and guarding his formula with claws sharper than steel. But to SpongeBob he was something more complicated. He was a mentor, yes, but also a father figure of sorts, stern at times, bewildering at others, yet always present. Mr. Krabs saw in SpongeBob a devotion he himself had long forgotten, a devotion not to money, but to meaning. And though he rarely said it aloud, there were moments when he watched the sponge move about the kitchen with a smile that softened even his hard shell. Mr. Krabs guarded the formula fiercely, and SpongeBob never questioned him. But deep inside he sometimes wondered whether the old crab feared losing the recipe itself, or losing the comfort it represented. For Mr. Krabs, the formula was not just words on paper. It was his life's anchor, the thread that bound his fortune, his pride, and his fears into something he could clutch
tightly. SpongeBob respected that.
He did not pry. He only carried on with his song, content to live in the glow of a mystery he did not need to solve. Still, there were nights when the sea pressed heavy against the windows, and the silence seemed to stretch endlessly. In those moments, SpongeBob would feel a strange tug inside him. It was not curiosity, not temptation, but something gentler, a sense that the secret formula was less about food and more about something unspoken, something everyone felt but no one named. The idea both comforted and unsettled him, like hearing a lullaby in a language you don't understand but still somehow know. He began to notice how the rhythm of the kitchen shaped more than just his work. It shaped him. The steadiness of the spatula taught him patience. The repetition of orders taught him resilience. The flow of customers, each one different yet each seeking the same comfort, taught him empathy. Without realizing it, the song of the Krusty Krab was shaping SpongeBob's very soul. His quirks, his laughter, his stretching, bending, and bounding, they were not just traits anymore. They were instruments in the song. Patrick, often waiting outside for him to finish his shifts, noticed the glow in his friend's eyes. He did not understand the formula or the lure of the Krusty Krab, but he understood SpongeBob's heart. And that was enough. Sometimes they would walk home together under the dim shimmer of the underwater moon, SpongeBob still humming the song of the grill, Patrick nodding along in quiet contentment. To anyone else it was nonsense. To Patrick, it was simply the sound of his best friend being himself. And so the song continued day after day, night after night. The Krusty Krab filled with life, not because of the secret hidden in a safe, but because of the music no one could see but everyone could feel. Customers left with full bellies, but more importantly, with lighter hearts. And in the middle of it all, SpongeBob stood like a conductor, guiding an orchestra of small joys, unaware that he himself was the melody tying them together. Yet beneath that melody, the whisper lingered. The formula remained locked away, its presence as steady as the tides, its mystery untouched. SpongeBob did not know it yet, but one day he would come to understand that the secret was not just in the recipe, but in the song he had been singing all along. For now, though, he was content to flip, to hum, to love without question. And the ocean, in its deep and endless wisdom, watched him tenderly as though it knew where the song was leading. The song of the Krusty Krab carried SpongeBob through his days, but when the last patty was flipped and the doors were locked, He returned to a quieter music, the music of friendship. Patrick was always waiting, not because he understood the mystery of the formula or the subtle rhythm of the grill, but because he understood SpongeBob. And that simple, unwavering presence was enough to make the world feel less heavy. Their friendship was not dramatic, not painted with grand gestures or complicated speeches. It was simple, the way the tide rises and falls without fanfare. Patrick never questioned why SpongeBob worked so hard or hummed so much. He only walked alongside him, listened when words spilled out, and offered silence when it was needed instead. That silence was its own kind of comfort, the kind that says, "I'm here and I'll stay here, no matter what." SpongeBob often wondered late at night when the sea was dark and still, how his life would feel without Patrick. He realized with a quiet certainty that it would feel emptier, less alive. His laughter might still bubble up, his songs might still echo in the kitchen, but without Patrick, there would be no one to share them with. And what is joy if not something shared? Patrick was clumsy, forgetful, often drifting through days as though they were soft clouds. But in his stillness, he carried a kind of wisdom, the wisdom of not needing to be anything more than what he was. SpongeBob, who felt so much, who stretched himself thin to care and to give, often found himself steadied by Patrick's gentle, unshaken loyalty. If SpongeBob was a song always searching for its chorus, Patrick was the steady drumbeat that kept the music alive. There were afternoons when they would lie on the grassy fields of Jellyfish Fields, watching the jellyfish drift like lanterns against the sea-blue sky. SpongeBob would speak of his dreams, of patties and spatulas, and the strange glowing pull of the secret formula. Patrick would nod, eyes half closed, sometimes murmuring a word, sometimes saying nothing at all. SpongeBob never minded. He knew Patrick's silence was not disinterest, but trust. That
He didn't need to understand the details to understand his friend's heart, and there were
evenings when Patrick would simply sit in SpongeBob's living room, both of them laughing at nothing at all, the kind of laughter that left their sides aching and their eyes watering. To anyone else it might have seemed childish, a waste of time, but to them it was sacred. It was proof that companionship did not need reasons. It only needed presence. One night, after a long shift, SpongeBob found himself unusually quiet as he walked home with Patrick. The streets of Bikini Bottom were hushed, the glow of the lanternfish casting long shadows on the sand. Patrick noticed his silence but did not press him. After a while, SpongeBob spoke, his voice soft, almost uncertain. "Do you ever wonder, Pat," he said, "why the formula is such a big deal?
I mean, it's just a piece of paper, right?
But sometimes
It feels like it's more than that, like it's part of something bigger."
like it connects us all somehow." Patrick blinked slowly, his eyes wide in their simple innocence.
"I don't know," he said.
"But I think, if it makes you happy, then it's important."
"Even if nobody knows why," SpongeBob smiled faintly.
It was not an answer, not really, but it was the kind of answer Patrick always gave, soft, unpolished, yet strangely grounding. It reminded SpongeBob that he didn't need to solve every mystery. Sometimes it was enough just to live inside it. Their friendship grew, not in leaps, but in layers, each moment adding another quiet thread to the bond that tied them together. SpongeBob learned patience from Patrick's slowness, learned steadiness from his loyalty, learned acceptance from his simplicity. And Patrick, though he never said it aloud, found in SpongeBob the spark that kept his days from fading into grey. It was Patrick who stood beside him when others doubted his ability to work at the Krusty Krab. It was Patrick who reminded him, in clumsy but heartfelt words, that he was more than enough. And it was Patrick who, without even realizing it, became the anchor that kept SpongeBob from drifting too far into the mystery of the formula. Because no matter how curious SpongeBob grew, no matter how deep the whisper called to him, he always had Patrick's presence to bring him back to what mattered most: love,
Laughter, companionship. There was one evening.
softer than most, when the two of them sat outside SpongeBob's pineapple house. The water above shimmered with faint silver light, and the sea around them was still. SpongeBob leaned back against the cool stone, his eyes half closed. "Pat," he whispered, "do you think we'll always be like this? Just here, together?" Patrick thought for a long while, his face tilted toward the shimmering waves. Finally, he said, "I don't see why not. You're my best friend, SpongeBob."
That doesn't change.
Not ever. The words so simple and unadorned sank deep into SpongeBob's heart. They wrapped around him like the ocean's tide, steady and warm. He didn't always understand Patrick's thoughts, but he understood his heart. And that was enough to make him feel safe, even in a world of secrets. The days rolled on, soft as waves, and their friendship only deepened. SpongeBob sang his song in the kitchen, Patrick drifted by his side, and together they wove a life that was richer than either of them realized. Neither of them knew then how deeply the formula's mystery would test them, how much it would draw others into its orbit. But they knew this. Whatever came, they would face it together, in laughter, in silence, in loyalty that asked for nothing in return. And in the distance, faint but steady, the whisper of the formula lingered. It did not rush, did not demand. It only waited, as the ocean always waits, for the day when its meaning would unfold. For now, SpongeBob had Patrick, and Patrick had SpongeBob, and that was enough. Enough to keep the song alive. Enough to make the world feel safe. Enough to make even the deepest mysteries seem gentle. The sea had its rhythms, steady as the beating of a heart, and within them SpongeBob found his comfort. Yet beneath the familiar pattern of work and friendship, something subtler had begun to stir, like a current deep below the waves. It did not break the surface, not yet, but SpongeBob could feel it whenever he let his mind drift too far into quiet. The whisper of the formula, always gentle, was now laced with something more persistent, as though the sea itself were leaning closer to speak. Still he carried on as he always had. The mornings brought laughter, the afternoons the busy hum of the Krusty Krab, and the evenings the soft presence of Patrick by his side. Nothing seemed outwardly different. Mr. Krabs shouted orders as though his voice could rattle coins loose from the walls. Squidward sighed in his perpetual weariness, and SpongeBob's spatula danced with its usual grace. And yet there were moments when his hand lingered on the grill longer than necessary, his mind caught in a stillness that none of the others noticed. It was during one such evening, after closing time, that Mr. Krabs called him into the back room. The office was cluttered with ledgers, old maps, and the faint scent of salt-soaked parchment. Krabs's eyes, sharp as polished shells, fixed on SpongeBob with unusual seriousness. "Lad," he said, his voice lower than usual, "you've been working harder than ever."
And I can see something's weighing on your mind.
"The formula," he paused, as though the very word required caution. "Has it spoken to you?" SpongeBob blinked, his heart skipping. He had never told anyone about the whispers. Not Patrick, not Squidward, not even Gary. The thought that Mr. Krabs might know sent a shiver through him, both unsettling and strangely comforting. "I don't know what you mean, Mr. Krabs," he said, though his voice carried a hesitation that betrayed him. Krabs studied him for a long moment, then leaned closer, lowering his tone further. "You might not understand it yet, lad, but the formula isn't just a recipe.
It's older than the Krusty Krab. Older than me, older than this town. There's a reason it must be guarded." The words sank into SpongeBob like anchors, pulling at thoughts he hadn't dared to give shape. "But it's food," he whispered, almost to himself.
"It's just food." Krabs shook his head slowly, his claw resting on the desk with a heavy click. "It's never just food, boy. It's what it represents.
It binds us to something bigger, something deep as the sea itself.
And once you hear its call, you can't unhear it." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the hum of unseen currents. SpongeBob felt small beneath it, like a single grain of sand in an ocean without end. He wanted to ask more, to press, until the mystery unraveled, but something in Krabs' eyes warned him against it. That night, walking home beneath the glow of the lanternfish, SpongeBob replayed every word in his mind. Patrick ambled beside him, humming tunelessly, and SpongeBob almost told him what had been said. But the words clung stubbornly to his chest, as though the secret itself had chosen him and would not let go. Patrick's presence soothed him, yet it also sharpened the weight of the silence he carried. Days turned into weeks, and the call grew stronger. It came to him while he cooked, while he laughed with Patrick, even in the quiet moments before sleep. It was not loud, never demanding, but steady, like the rhythm of the tide against the shore. At times it almost sounded like a song, low and haunting, threaded with notes he couldn't place. One afternoon in Jellyfish Fields, as the sky above shimmered with drifting light, SpongeBob found himself staring at the horizon while Patrick collected shells nearby. The whisper rose again, clearer than ever before. It was not words, not exactly, but meaning pressed itself into his heart with undeniable force. Seek deeper. Do not fear, his breath caught. For a long moment he thought Patrick might have heard it too, but when he glanced over, Patrick was still humming, still stacking shells with clumsy care, untouched by the current that pulled at SpongeBob's spirit. It was then SpongeBob realized something both comforting and unsettling. This journey might not belong to both of them. Patrick would remain by his side, always loyal, but the whisper had chosen SpongeBob alone, and yet he could not face it alone. Not entirely. That night he sat on the edge of his bed, Gary curled at his feet, and whispered aloud, as though to test the thought against the air. If I follow this?
If I listen?
Will I lose what I have? Gary blinked at him, slow and untroubled, and meowed softly, as though to say that nothing could ever be fully lost. But SpongeBob's heart remained uneasy. The next day brought its own shift. A stranger had arrived in Bikini Bottom, cloaked in an air of quiet curiosity. He was no ordinary customer. His movements were too careful, his gaze too lingering on the walls, the kitchen, the signs. When SpongeBob brought him his order, the man smiled faintly and said, "You cook with care." "That's rare." SpongeBob laughed, shy but sincere.
I just love what I do.
The man's eyes, dark and knowing, lingered a moment longer. "And what you love will lead you deeper than you imagine." The words sent a chill through SpongeBob. He wanted to ask what the stranger meant, but before he could, the man finished his meal and left, vanishing into the shifting streets of town as though he had never been there. That night, as he replayed the moment again and again, SpongeBob realized that the formula was no longer a secret held by Mr. Krabs alone. Others knew of it, or at least of its weight, and if others knew, then others might seek it. The thought unsettled him, not because of what it meant for the recipe, but because of what it might mean for the balance of their world. Still, when he closed his eyes, it was not fear that filled him. It was a strange, deep calm, as though the whisper itself wrapped around him with assurance. It did not ask for haste.
It only asked for faith. And so SpongeBob resolved quietly within himself he would listen.
He would not chase the secret blindly nor speak of it recklessly, but he would let the tide carry him, trusting that when the time came, he would know where to step. Patrick, as always, noticed the quiet in him, but did not press. He only stayed close, offering his steady silence. And though SpongeBob felt the distance between them widening just slightly, he also felt gratitude. Because even if Patrick could not hear the whisper, he gave SpongeBob the courage to keep listening. The formula's song was no longer hidden in shadows. It was rising, slow and steady, and SpongeBob knew it would soon draw others into its orbit. The current had begun to shift, and he was caught within it. But he was not afraid. Not yet. The days that followed were quieter, almost deceptively so. SpongeBob moved through them with his usual enthusiasm, flipping patties and humming melodies that had begun to take on a slightly stranger tone, one that twisted gently in the corners of his mind. The whisper of the formula, once a soft background hum, had grown more insistent, threading itself into the edges of his thoughts without urgency, without alarm. It did not push him to act recklessly. It merely reminded him, always, that there was more to the world than the laughter of the Krusty Krab or the stillness of jellyfish fields. Patrick noticed the change first, as he always seemed to notice the smallest ripples in SpongeBob's mood. One afternoon, while they lay together on the soft seagrass, watching the jellyfish drift in lazy arcs above them, Patrick tilted his head, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully.
You've been
Different, SpongeBob.
not bad different. Just quieter, maybe?
SpongeBob smiled, a faint, reflective curve of his lips. I don't know, Pat, he admitted.
It's like...
There's a song I can hear, but I don't know the words yet. It's trying to tell me something, but I can't make sense of it. And yet, it feels right somehow. Patrick gave a slow nod as if that made perfect sense. Well, if it feels right, maybe you just need to... Keep listening. SpongeBob laughed softly. That's exactly what I've been trying to do. The whisper became part of his days in subtle ways. When he cooked, the patties seemed to respond to him differently, flipping themselves with an almost playful precision. Customers noticed it too, though they couldn't name why. They only felt a sense of calm and warmth, a rare kind of happiness that lingered long after the meal ended. SpongeBob realized with quiet wonder that the formula was not only a secret, it was alive in some way, living through the act of creation rather than resting in the locked office. Even Mr. Krabs began to notice subtle changes. The old crab, usually alert only to coin and profit, observed SpongeBob's care with something akin to pride. He didn't comment much, but the glint in his eyes occasionally softened, as though he recognized the weight of what his young sponge was carrying without ever needing to name it. Yet the whisper was not entirely benevolent. It was curious, persistent, sometimes unsettling in its quiet insistence. SpongeBob began to feel it in moments when he least expected, while walking home after a long day, while resting in his pineapple, even while laughing with Patrick. Each time it rose like a tide in the back of his mind, reminding him that the secret was more than a recipe, more than laughter, more than a community. It was something older, something that moved slowly but with purpose, calling him forward in ways he could not yet understand. One evening, as he cleaned the counters after the last customer had gone, SpongeBob paused and pressed a hand to the cool wooden surface. The hum of the kitchen felt different that night, heavier, almost echoing with voices he could not name. He closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the sound fill him, and felt the first stirrings of something like understanding. It was not knowledge in the usual sense, not a clear image or a name. It was feeling, a sensation that told him the formula's secret was not simply for the Krusty Krab or Mr. Krabs, but for him in ways he could not yet see. Patrick, waiting outside as usual, noticed the unusual pause in his friend's steps. "You okay in there?" he called softly. SpongeBob opened his eyes, the shimmer of the lanternfish catching in their depths. "I think—"
"Oh, I'm hearing it better tonight," he said. "Not just the song of the Krusty Krab."
"Something else, something beneath it," Patrick smiled, though his brow furrowed in gentle concern.
"Well, as long as it's not scary, right?"
"It's not scary," SpongeBob assured him.
"It's comforting almost."
Like it's saying I'm on the right path. The following days brought subtle changes to the rhythm of SpongeBob's life. He found himself noticing things he had never paid much attention to. The pattern of sunlight filtering through the water, the faint shape of a jellyfish's pulse, the gentle sway of kelp in the evening currents. Each observation seemed to connect him more deeply to the world around him, and through that connection, to the whisper that had begun to define the edges of his life. Even work at the Krusty Krab felt different. Each patty carried a new kind of intention, a quiet mindfulness that infused the food with an almost imperceptible warmth. Customers felt it, though they could not name it, and returned again and again, drawn not just by taste, but by the unspoken care behind it. SpongeBob realized that the act of cooking, of giving, of simply being attentive, was becoming the very way the whisper communicated with him. Mr. Krabs remained vigilant, observing from the shadows, but even he noticed the gentle transformation. The old crab began to understand that the formula's power was not contained in secrecy alone. It was reflected in the hands of one who truly understood care, patience, and devotion. Yet Krabs did not say this aloud, for words were fragile things. The magic, he sensed, was in experience, not in explanation. SpongeBob's nights became a little longer, a little softer, filled with quiet reflection. He often sat by the window listening to the waves, letting the whisper grow louder without fear. Sometimes he imagined it as a thread weaving through the town, connecting not just the formula, but every smile, every act of kindness, every subtle gesture of love. He did not yet know where the thread would lead, but he trusted that the journey itself was enough. And in all of this, Patrick remained a steady presence, a silent companion who did not question or judge. He did not hear the whisper in the same way SpongeBob did, but he felt its effects, the warmth in his friend's laughter, the steady light in his eyes, the sense of purpose that had begun to radiate from SpongeBob's every movement. In Patrick's quiet way, he understood that this journey was unique to SpongeBob, yet still shared in its unfolding. As the week waned, a new awareness settled over SpongeBob. The whisper was no longer just a hum behind the Krusty Krab or in the swaying kelp. It had become a presence, subtle but undeniable, an invitation to step forward, to grow, to embrace the unknown. And for the first time, SpongeBob felt ready. Not because he understood the secret, not because he had solved it, but because he trusted the rhythm of his own heart, the melody he had been singing all along, and the steadfast presence of those who walked beside him. And so, beneath the gentle sway of the ocean and the quiet shimmer of lanternfish, SpongeBob took a deep breath, feeling the current of destiny stir around him. The whisper was no longer just a sound, it was a guide, a soft, insistent companion that promised discovery, growth, and understanding. He did not yet know where it would lead, but he knew one thing: he would follow it, step by step, with patience, love, and unwavering care. And somewhere, deep beneath the waves, the secret waited, patient and unhurried, for him to grow into its meaning. The morning sun rose slowly over Bikini Bottom, filtering through the water in muted golds and soft blues, painting the streets with a gentle calm that seemed almost sacred. SpongeBob awoke with a lightness he hadn't known he carried before, the whisper from the days past lingering softly in the edges of his mind. It was not a voice, not a song, at least not one he could name, but a presence, patient and steady, urging him to notice the small things around him, to trust in the rhythm that had carried him this far. He padded barefoot across the floor of his pineapple, brushing his teeth with the usual meticulous care, humming quietly to himself. Even in these ordinary moments he felt the weight of the whisper's subtle guidance. It was as though the very tides of the ocean had shifted, bending not the water, but the way he moved through it.
Every gesture, every breath,
carried with it a sense of purpose he could not yet define. Patrick waited outside as usual, sprawled lazily on the sand, one arm tucked beneath his head and the other holding a small collection of shells he had found during the night. When SpongeBob stepped outside, he offered a sleepy, crooked smile. "Morning, Pat," he said. "Ready to see what today brings?" Patrick blinked slowly and yawned. "Morning. Sure, SpongeBob. But what are we supposed to see?" SpongeBob laughed softly, the sound carrying a lilt that reminded him of the hum in the kitchen.
I don't know yet, he admitted.
But I think we're about to find out. The morning passed as usual at the Krusty Krab, but there was a quiet difference in the air. SpongeBob moved with a subtle newness, more attuned to the textures of the kitchen, the sway of the patrons, the faint cadence of the fryer's hiss. The whisper, once just a thread in the background, had begun to pulse more insistently, brushing at the edges of his consciousness like a gentle wave, coaxing him towards something unseen. By midday, SpongeBob found himself stepping outside the Krusty Krab, a small notebook clutched in his hands. He had never been one for writing, preferring to let his thoughts live in motion rather than on paper, but the whisper seemed to insist upon it now. He opened the notebook and began to jot down small observations, the angle of sunlight on the coral, the way a school of fish darted in unison, the patterns of bubbles rising through the water. Each note was a careful attempt to capture the intangible, to map the melody that was slowly unfolding beneath the surface of his days. Patrick leaned over his shoulder, peering at the uneven lines of ink. "What's all that?" he asked. SpongeBob paused, smiling faintly. "Just noticing things. Trying to follow the rhythm the way the world moves. It's
harder to explain than I thought." Patrick nodded with a solemnity that was rare for him. "Well, I like that you're noticing. That sounds
important." As the afternoon waned, SpongeBob found himself drawn toward the deeper parts of Bikini Bottom he rarely explored. There were alleys and tunnels, swaying kelp forests and hidden caves, places that felt old as the ocean itself. The whisper tugged him toward them with subtle insistence, guiding his steps without forcing them. He felt no fear, only a quiet anticipation, as if he were approaching the edge of a secret the sea had been holding for him all along. In one particularly still grove of kelp, he paused, noticing a faint shimmer across the sand. It was almost imperceptible, a soft glimmer-like light refracting through water, yet it drew him closer with magnetic curiosity. He knelt down, brushing aside grains of sand with care, and found a small circular object, worn smooth with time. SpongeBob picked it up gently, turning it over in his hand. It was neither gold nor silver, but something between, a muted glow that seemed alive. Patrick, peering over his shoulder, tilted his head.
"Is it important?"
SpongeBob didn't answer right away. He could feel the hum of the whisper through the object, subtle but insistent, like a pulse that matched his own heartbeat. "I think it is," he said finally, voice soft. "But it's not about the object itself. It's about what it's trying to tell me." For the first time, SpongeBob realized that the secret formula was not merely a recipe guarded by Mr. Krabs. It was a thread woven into the very fabric of the world around him. Its essence was in the care of a patty, the laughter of friends, the quiet glow of the ocean floor, and now, even in this small, unassuming artifact, it was not meant to be hoarded or controlled. It was meant to guide, to illuminate, to teach patience and attention, love and subtlety. The realization filled him with a gentle awe. He could feel the weight of it settle around him, a warmth that wrapped through his chest and down into his limbs. For a long moment he simply sat there, the object cupped in his hands, letting the understanding seep into him without needing words. Patrick, sensing the depth of the moment even without knowing its meaning, sat beside him. "You're glowing," he said, as if the shimmer in SpongeBob's eyes reflected the faint light of the object. SpongeBob laughed quietly, a sound like water over pebbles. "Maybe the ocean just likes me today," he said. But even as he smiled, he knew the journey had only begun. The whisper had led him to this artifact, to this understanding, but it would not stop here. It would guide him further, urging him to stretch beyond the safe rhythms of his familiar days, to explore the layers of the secret that lay beneath the formula's surface. As the sun dipped lower, spilling molten gold across the sand, SpongeBob tucked the object carefully into his notebook and rose, brushing sand from his hands. Patrick rose beside him, stretching his limbs lazily. "Where now?" Patrick asked. SpongeBob looked toward the fading horizon, toward the swaying kelp and the distant shimmer of light beneath the waves. "Wherever it wants us to go," he said softly. "But we'll go together, step by step." And as they walked back toward the familiar streets of Bikini Bottom, the whisper followed them, patient and steady like the tide. It did not rush them, did not demand. It only promised that the path would unfold in time, and that every small step, every small act of care, every laugh and every patty flipped was part of the song it had been singing all along. SpongeBob felt a deep calm settle into him, a resonance that filled the spaces between his thoughts. He realized that the formula's secret was not a thing to possess, but a thing to become. And with that understanding came a kind of peace, a trust in the journey that stretched as far as the ocean itself. The whisper would continue to guide him, subtle and unseen as it had always done, shaping the way he moved, the way he loved and the way he lived. And through it all, Patrick's steady presence reminded him that even the most mysterious paths are easier when shared with someone who simply believes in you. And somewhere beneath the calm shimmer of the sea, the secret waited, patient as ever, ready to reveal itself only when the heart was ready to receive it. The days stretched gently into one another, each a quiet unfolding of light and water, of laughter and hum, and SpongeBob felt the weight of the whisper settle more fully into his bones. It was not a voice, not in any conventional sense, but a presence, subtle as the current and persistent as the tide. It moved with him through the Krusty Krab, through jellyfish fields, through the quiet streets of Bikini Bottom, and even into the stillness of his own pineapple home. It was patient, as the ocean itself is patient, never demanding but always guiding, always nudging him towards something deeper. Patrick noticed the change as always, though he could never put it into words. There was a gravity to SpongeBob now, a quiet intention in his every movement, the kind of attention that made the world itself seem brighter, sharper, more alive.
"You're thinking about something big again, aren't you?"
Patrick asked one afternoon as they wandered past the familiar curves of the coral hills. SpongeBob smiled faintly, his gaze distant, following a school of fish weaving through the water. "Maybe," he said softly. "It's
"Not something I can explain yet. But I feel like I'm on the edge of understanding." Patrick tilted his head. "The edge of what?"
SpongeBob laughed quietly, the sound like water running over smooth stones. "I don't know. The edge of something important."
"Something that matters more than I've realized." That night,
After the Krusty Krab had closed and the glow of the lanternfish filled the streets with muted light, SpongeBob sat by his window, notebook open, the small artifact he had discovered tucked carefully beside him. He traced his fingers along its smooth surface, feeling the subtle pulse that seemed to hum beneath his touch. It was alive in a way he had never experienced before, not as an object, but as a presence, as a guide, as a song he could not yet hear fully, but could sense in every fiber of his being. He wondered if Mr. Krabs understood this aspect of the formula, if anyone did, but the thought passed quickly. He did not need to know now. The journey was not about possession, he realized, but about attunement, about listening, about learning to move with the rhythm that had always been there, waiting beneath the surface. The next morning, he awoke with a sense of quiet resolve. There was a pull, subtle but insistent, drawing him toward the northern reaches of Bikini Bottom, where the kelp grew thick and the light dappled the sand with shifting patterns. Patrick followed, loyal and steady, humming tunelessly. Unaware of the deeper currents SpongeBob felt tugging at him. As they moved through the dense kelp forests, the whisper became more pronounced, almost tangible, brushing at the edges of SpongeBob's thoughts, coaxing him forward. He did not fear it. He did not hesitate. Every step felt guided, as though the ocean itself were bending its currents to align with his path. At the heart of the kelp, they came upon a clearing that neither of them had seen before. It was small, circular, and framed by strands of golden kelp that shimmered in the light filtering from above. The sand here was pale and smooth, untouched by footprints, and in its center lay another artifact, larger than the first, and radiating a soft, steady glow. SpongeBob knelt carefully beside it, the whisper now a gentle hum in his chest, urging him to reach out. Patrick peered over his shoulder, eyes wide. "Whoa, that's
Shiny?" SpongeBob smiled softly, his hands hovering above the artifact. "It's more than shiny, Pat. I think it's trying to tell me something." He closed his eyes, taking a slow, deliberate breath, letting the quiet envelop him.
The artifact pulsed beneath his fingers, not in a mechanical way, but like a heartbeat, synchronizing subtly with his own. In that moment, he felt the whisper fully, not just as sound or presence, but as understanding and unspoken knowledge that the formula, the Krusty Krab, the laughter of friends, and the rhythm of daily life were threads woven together into something larger than any one element could contain. Patrick remained silent, sensing the gravity without needing explanation.
"You look
"Calm," he said. SpongeBob opened his eyes, a faint glow reflected in their depths.
"I am," he whispered. "I feel connected."
"Like everything I've done, every patty I've flipped, every laugh I've shared has led me here." The sun filtered through the kelp, creating shifting patterns on the sand, and SpongeBob realized that the journey was not about discovering a secret formula as a thing, but about discovering the secret of care, of attention, of presence. Each act of kindness, each careful moment, each note in the song he had been humming all these years, was a part of the formula's essence. The artifact's glow seemed to pulse in response to his realization, faint and steady as though approving of his understanding. He could feel it extending beyond him, threading through the water, through the town, through the lives of those around him. It was not meant to be hoarded. It was meant to be lived. Patrick, sensing the culmination of something profound, nudged SpongeBob gently.
"So, what do we do now?"
SpongeBob smiled, brushing sand from his hands. "We keep moving forward," he said softly, "step by step, like always. The path will show itself as we go." And so they rose, leaving the clearing with its quiet magic behind, carrying the knowledge that the formula's secret was not simply in a recipe or a vault, but in the quiet, deliberate care of every day, in the presence of friends, in the act of living with intention. SpongeBob understood, more deeply than ever, that the whisper would continue to guide him, patient and steady, as it had from the very beginning. As they made their way back through the kelp, the glow of the artifact faded into the ambient light, but the feeling remained warm and persistent, threading through SpongeBob's heart like a soft lullaby. He knew the journey was far from over. The secret had many layers yet to reveal, and the ocean held more guidance for him still. But for the first time, he felt ready, not with urgency, not with fear, but with quiet trust and wonder, buoyed by the steady presence of Patrick beside him. The whisper would continue to call, subtle as the tide, a reminder that the formula's secret was never truly hidden. It had always been a song, and he had been singing it all along. The days began to ripple with a subtle shift, like the first hint of wind over a still sea. SpongeBob moved through Bikini Bottom with a quiet attentiveness that felt almost sacred, noticing the soft glimmer of sunlight on coral, the gentle sway of seaweed in the currents, and the faint trails of bubbles left by fish passing overhead. The whisper, which had once been only a background hum, had grown into a rhythm, a pulse that matched the cadence of his own heartbeat. It guided him not with instructions or urgency, but with the quiet insistence of a tide shaping the shore. Patrick walked beside him as always, humming a tuneless tune, seemingly unaware of the subtle magic weaving itself through SpongeBob's days. And yet, Patrick's presence was essential, grounding him, reminding him that the journey was not solitary, even if the path of discovery belonged primarily to SpongeBob. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the water in pale golden beams, SpongeBob felt a pull toward the outskirts of Jellyfish Fields, toward a part of the ocean floor he had rarely explored. It was quieter there, the water cooler and still, and the light fractured in soft, dancing patterns across the sand. The whisper grew stronger, threading through his mind like a soft, steady song, urging him to step carefully, to notice, to absorb. He paused at the edge of a small trench, peering down into its shadowed depths. Something glimmered faintly there, half hidden by sand and stone. SpongeBob's curiosity tugged at him, gentle but compelling. Patrick shuffled closer, peering over the edge.
"You're staring at that thing."
"Like it's a secret," he said. SpongeBob's lips curved into a small smile. "It might be," he said softly. "Or maybe it's trying to show me something."
"I'm not sure yet." With careful movements, SpongeBob descended into the trench, feeling the cool current brush against his skin, carrying the quiet pulse of the whisper deeper into him.
There, half buried, was a small, intricate device, unlike anything he had seen before. It was delicate, etched with patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, and it radiated a faint warmth, as if it carried a memory rather than a physical heat. Patrick leaned close.
"Is it alive?"
he asked, voice hushed. SpongeBob's fingers hovered above it.
"In a way," he said. "Not in the way we usually think of life, but—"
"It's aware. It responds to attention, to care. It's
teaching me." The realization filled SpongeBob with a quiet awe.
He understood now that the formula was not just a collection of ingredients or a closely guarded secret. It was a guide, a living map of attention, care, and understanding. Each artifact he discovered, each subtle pulse, was a lesson embedded in the very essence of the ocean. It was not meant to be possessed or controlled, but to be experienced, internalized, and reflected in the way one lived. Patrick, sensing the importance without fully grasping it, nudged SpongeBob gently. "So, what do we do?" SpongeBob considered the question, letting the rhythm of the whisper guide him. "We watch, we listen. We let it show us what it wants us to see." Step by step, carefully, the artifact pulsed faintly in response, almost like a heartbeat syncing with SpongeBob's own. It seemed to approve, as if acknowledging his willingness to follow without demanding, to observe without rushing. He traced the patterns etched into its surface with delicate care, noticing the subtle variations, the way they shifted with the light and the motion of the water. As the sun dipped lower, spilling warm tones through the kelp, SpongeBob felt a profound sense of connection, not only to the artifact, but to Patrick, to the Krusty Krab, to the laughter and small joys of the town, and even to the whisper itself. He realized that the formula's secret was not confined to a recipe or an object. It was woven into every act of care, every attention given to the world around him, every smile and laugh that resonated like a gentle echo. Patrick, though he did not fully understand, felt the depth of the moment. He did not speak, did not question, but simply remained beside SpongeBob, a silent anchor in the ebbing light. And that presence, SpongeBob realized, was as much a part of the journey as the artifact itself. They stayed in the trench for some time, absorbing the quiet magic before ascending slowly, SpongeBob carefully lifting the device and tucking it into his notebook alongside the other artifact. The whisper lingered, subtle and patient, urging reflection, guiding understanding but never forcing, never rushing. Back on the soft sand of Jellyfish Fields, SpongeBob paused to watch a school of jellyfish drift lazily overhead. Each one moved with a rhythm all its own, yet together they formed a harmonious flow, a lesson in balance and presence. He realized that the formula's teachings were like that, a network of small acts, subtle attentions and quiet care that, when aligned, created something profound and beautiful. Patrick, sprawled lazily beside him, yawned.
I like it here, he said softly. It's
Peaceful. SpongeBob smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him.
Yes, Pat, he whispered. It is, and I think
We're learning to see it little by little. Every day, every act, every moment matters. The sun faded into soft twilight, and the whisper settled into a gentle murmur, as if satisfied with the progress made. SpongeBob realized that the journey was far from over, that the ocean held still more secrets, and that the formula's lessons were layered and unfolding in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. But he felt ready now, grounded in patience, curiosity, and the steady presence of Patrick beside him. As they walked back toward the familiar streets of Bikini Bottom, the gentle luminescence of lanternfish guiding their path, SpongeBob understood that the true magic of the formula was not hidden in secrecy or possession, but in the care and attention with which one approached the world. The whispers, the artifacts, the subtle currents, all were teaching him to move with awareness, to honor the small miracles in daily life, and to trust in the rhythm that connected everything together. And beneath the calm shimmer of the ocean, the secret waited patiently, a quiet companion, ready to reveal more when the heart was prepared, guiding SpongeBob ever forward in his gentle, luminous journey. The mornings had begun to carry a softness that felt almost sacred, as if the ocean itself had shifted its currents to cradle SpongeBob in gentle rhythms. Each day he awoke to the quiet hum of the whisper threading through his thought, a presence more familiar now, like an old friend waiting patiently just beyond reach. It did not demand anything, yet it called him forward, a steady insistence that mingled with the rhythm of his heart and the familiar sounds of Bikini Bottom stirring to life. Patrick ambled beside him that morning, a slow, comforting shadow, humming a tune that had no name but felt warm in the quiet. SpongeBob smiled at him, a soft gratitude shining in his eyes.
Oh, Pat, I think today
Something might shift, he said quietly.
I feel it in the water, in the sand, in the light. The whisper.
It's closer, Patrick blinked, uncertain but trusting. Closer to what, SpongeBob? I'm not sure, SpongeBob admitted, his voice barely above the gentle lapping of the waves. But I feel like I need to be ready. The Krusty Krab opened as usual, the clatter of spatulas and the sizzle of frying patties filling the familiar space. Yet for SpongeBob, nothing was quite as ordinary as it seemed. Each patty flipped, each motion repeated countless times before, now carried a subtle awareness, a tender attention that felt connected to something larger. Customers lingered longer than usual, sensing a calm and warmth that defied explanation. And in the quiet, as the day stretched forward, the whisper pressed closer, threading around SpongeBob's thoughts, urging him to notice, to attune, to move gently but purposefully. By afternoon, SpongeBob felt the pull stronger, guiding him toward the northern cove, beyond the familiar streets and coral hills, where light fractured through the water in soft, dancing rays and the kelp swayed like slow, deliberate music. Patrick followed, faithful and patient, a comforting presence that needed no explanation. The pull was not urgent, not demanding, but persistent, a thread drawing him toward a place he had never explored before. In the cove, SpongeBob paused at the edge of a shallow trench. The sand shifted under his feet, glinting faintly in the refracted light, and he felt the whisper wrap around him like a current, encouraging, urging, guiding. Half buried in the sand was an object unlike the others, larger, more intricate, etched with patterns that seemed to ripple as he moved closer. He knelt carefully, brushing the sand away with deliberate reverence. Patrick peered over his shoulder, his eyes wide.
"That's big," he said softly. "And
Shiny. It's more than that, Pat," SpongeBob murmured, tracing the etched patterns with delicate fingers.
it's alive in a way. Not like us, not like Gary, but aware."
Teaching, guiding. For a long moment he simply held his hands above it, closing his eyes and breathing slowly, letting the currents of the water and the quiet pulse of the artifact flow into him. He felt the whisper rise, soft and insistent, threading into his chest like a melody he had always known but never fully heard. And then, as if the world itself exhaled in relief, he understood. The secret formula was not merely a recipe. It had never been about patties or profit. It was about attention, care, and presence. It was about being mindful of the world, of the small acts, of the gestures that ripple outward in ways too subtle to see at first. It was about love, of friends, of community.
Of life itself and the way that love could transform even the simplest things into something luminous and alive. Patrick,
Sensing the weight of the moment, nudged SpongeBob gently. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice hushed with awe. SpongeBob smiled, a quiet radiance in his eyes. "We learn, we notice, we live it. The formula, it's in every patty, every laugh, every moment we care. Step by step, we follow it, and it will teach us more." As he spoke, the artifact pulsed gently in his hands, a soft, warm glow that seemed to respond to the clarity in his heart. SpongeBob realized then that the journey was not about discovery in the conventional sense. It was about attunement, about understanding the subtle currents that bind the world together, about trusting the rhythm of life and the guidance of something patient and unseen. The afternoon faded into a gentle twilight, the golden light filtering through the kelp, turning to muted blues and soft shadows. SpongeBob felt a deep calm settle over him, a resonance that hummed quietly through every cell, as if the ocean itself were acknowledging his understanding. He tucked the artifact carefully into his notebook, alongside the others, and rose, brushing sand from his hands. Patrick stretched beside him, a soft yawn escaping.
"You look
"Different," he said. SpongeBob nodded, a gentle smile curving his lips.
I feel different," he admitted.
"Like I understand something I couldn't before."
"Something small yet enormous."
The formula isn't just something to keep, it's something to live, to honor, to share in our way every day. They walked back through the cove, the faint luminescence of lanternfish guiding their path, the quiet rhythm of the ocean surrounding them. SpongeBob felt the whisper receding slightly now, content in its work, confident that he was beginning to grasp the lessons it had patiently offered. He knew there was more ahead, deeper currents yet to explore, more revelations waiting in the hidden corners of the sea. And yet, in that moment, he felt a profound sense of peace. He understood that the journey itself, the attention, the care, the love woven into daily life, was as meaningful as any final revelation. The whisper would continue to guide him, patient and gentle, a constant companion in the quiet unfolding of his days. Patrick remained beside him, steady as ever, a reminder that even the deepest mysteries are easier to face when shared. And as the sun dipped fully below the horizon, painting the water in muted shades of indigo and gold, SpongeBob let himself simply be, letting the currents of life and care flow through him, feeling the quiet pulse of understanding settle into his bones. The formula's secret, he realized, had always been present, not in hiding, not in guarding, but in the gentle attention and love that suffused every small act. Every laugh, every moment lived with care, and somewhere beneath the calm shimmer of the ocean, the secret waited patiently, ready to reveal the next layer when the heart was ready to receive it. The mornings had taken on a soft, almost sacred rhythm, as if the ocean itself had settled into a lullaby just for SpongeBob. The whisper, persistent but gentle, had woven itself more fully into the patterns of his days, threading through the familiar routines and familiar laughter like a quiet tide shaping the edges of his world. It no longer felt distant or foreign. It was part of him, like the heartbeat in his chest or the pulse of water around his pineapple home. Patrick walked beside him through jellyfish fields, humming a tune that had no name, yet seemed perfectly attuned to the calm rhythm of the day. "You've been quiet lately," he said, voice soft, almost a whisper itself.
But it's not sad quiet. It's like
Thinking quiet. SpongeBob smiled faintly, the corners of his lips tugging upward.
I guess I'm
Reflecting, he said gently, "The whisper. It's teaching me about the little things."
about care, attention, love, and how they all connect. Patrick blinked, absorbing the words. Like every jellyfish, every bubble, every thing? Yes, SpongeBob whispered, his gaze tracing the currents above them.
Even the smallest things. Everything matters. And the secret formula, it's never really been just a recipe. It's been teaching me how to see the world and how to live gently in it. The sunlight filtered through the water in soft, dappled patterns, creating shifting mosaics on the sand. SpongeBob noticed every detail, the faint ripple of a current, the shimmer of tiny bubbles, the graceful dance of jellyfish in the distance. Each observation felt like a thread being added to a tapestry, weaving the whisper's lessons deeper into his understanding. By afternoon, he found himself drawn to the northern coral cliffs, where the water deepened and the kelp swayed like slow, deliberate music. The artifacts he had discovered in earlier explorations seemed to hum faintly in his notebook, as though they recognized the growth within him. SpongeBob traced the intricate patterns once more, feeling the pulse of each piece, sensing the quiet wisdom that had been waiting for him all along. Patrick lagged slightly behind, watching his friend with quiet awe.
You seem different, he said. Not like before when you were excited all the time.
"This calm you have now?"
It's warm, SpongeBob nodded, feeling the resonance of the whisper deepen.
"It's a kind of understanding, Pat," he said.
I think
"I'm starting to see what it means to really care. Not just about patties or the Krusty Krab or even friends, but about the way everything fits together, the small acts."
the quiet moments. They're the real magic. As they wandered closer to the cliffs, the whisper guided him toward a secluded alcove where the water shimmered in deeper shades of blue and gold.
There, the light fractured through the coral, casting delicate patterns on the sand, and SpongeBob noticed something new, a faint trail of symbols etched into the stone, almost imperceptible but unmistakably intentional. He knelt down, brushing away grains of sand, tracing the patterns with a finger. Patrick peered over his shoulder, tilting his head. "That looks fancy. Is it important?" SpongeBob felt a pulse of the whisper ripple through him, faint but insistent.
Yes, he said softly.
"But not in the way we usually think.
It's guidance.
A way of showing how attention and care flow through everything." He traced the symbols slowly, letting their curves and angles sink into his awareness. The whisper hummed softly, aligning with the rhythm of his heartbeat, and SpongeBob realized that the formula's secret was not only about creating something tangible, it was about understanding connections, about fostering harmony, about seeing how small gestures ripple outward. Patrick, sensing the gravity of the moment, sat quietly beside him.
So it's like
"The world's way of saying, pay attention?" he asked. SpongeBob nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Yes, exactly. And it's showing me how much I've been part of it all along."
every patty, every laugh, every day I've spent paying attention.
"It's all part of this song, this rhythm." The sun dipped lower, the water around them turning muted shades of indigo and gold. SpongeBob felt a deep calm settle into his chest, the quiet understanding threading through him like a gentle current. The artifacts, the whisper, Patrick's presence, They were all pieces of a larger harmony he was only beginning to understand. He rose slowly, tucking the notebook and the artifacts carefully into his bag. "We should keep moving," he said softly. "There's more to see, more to learn. But we do it slowly, carefully, step by step." Patrick stretched beside him, a contented yawn escaping. "I like slow," he said. "It's
Peaceful, SpongeBob smiled, feeling warmth in the quiet.
It is peaceful," he agreed. "And that's part of the formula too. The patience, the care, the love in each small thing we do. That's what really matters." As they made their way back through the kelp and along the coral paths, SpongeBob felt the whisper settle into a soft murmur, patient and steady. He understood now that the journey was not about possession, not about unlocking a mystery in haste, but about attuning himself to the quiet currents of life, noticing the subtleties, and honoring the threads that connected him to everything around him. By the time they returned to the familiar streets of Bikini Bottom, the first stars of evening shimmered faintly through the water, their gentle light reflecting in SpongeBob's eyes. He felt a profound gratitude for the journey, for Patrick, for the whisper, for the small moments that had taught him the true rhythm of care. And in that quiet glow, he knew that there were still lessons to come, deeper currents to explore, and more understanding to be gained. But for now, he rested in the peace of knowing he was exactly where he needed to be, guided by the steady, patient presence of the whisper, and the gentle companionship of a friend who had always been there beside him. The secret formula, he realized, had always been a song, and he had been learning to listen all along. The ocean had begun to settle into the slow rhythm of evening, soft currents brushing against the coral and sending faint ripples across the sand. SpongeBob wandered through the quiet streets of Bikini Bottom with a calm that seemed almost otherworldly, his eyes tracing the patterns of light and shadow as they danced through the water. The whisper, subtle yet insistent, lingered in the corners of his awareness, wrapping around him like a familiar cloak. It did not speak in words, but in pulses and nudges, guiding him toward a deeper understanding that he had only begun to grasp. Patrick shuffled beside him, humming a tuneless melody that seemed to harmonize with the soft glow of lanternfish drifting above. "You've been different lately," he said, voice gentle. "Not like when you're excited about patties or jellyfish."
This calm, it's nice. SpongeBob smiled faintly, feeling the warmth of Patrick's observation. "I think
"I'm learning to see things differently," he said quietly. "The formula?
It's not just a secret recipe.
It's a rhythm, a way of living.
Every small act, every laugh, every bit of care, it all matters."
And I'm starting to understand how to follow that rhythm." Patrick nodded slowly, tilting his head as if trying to absorb the weight of SpongeBob's words.
"So it's like noticing things? Really noticing?"
"Yes," SpongeBob whispered. "Noticing, feeling, being present. That's where the magic lies. The formula isn't about a product or a patty. It's about attention, love, and patience, about understanding the connections in the world around us and letting them guide us." As they walked through jellyfish fields, SpongeBob noticed things he had never paid attention to before: the faint shimmer of sunlight on the sand, the delicate sway of each strand of kelp, the slow, deliberate dance of jellyfish in the current. Each observation felt like a thread being woven into a larger tapestry, a gentle unfolding of understanding that stretched beyond him and Patrick, beyond even the walls of the Krusty Krab, into the living ocean itself. By the time they reached the edge of the northern cove, where the water deepened into quiet shadows, SpongeBob felt the whisper grow more pronounced, guiding him toward a secluded alcove he had never explored. The light fractured through the coral in soft, shifting patterns, painting the sand in muted golds and blues. There, half buried, lay the final artifact he had been seeking, intricate, luminous, etched with symbols that seemed to move subtly as he approached. Patrick leaned over, wide-eyed. "That looks serious," he murmured. SpongeBob knelt beside it, his fingers hovering above the smooth, glowing surface. "It's more than serious," he said softly. "It's alive. Not in the way we usually think."
It's patient, teaching, waiting. It's showing me something I couldn't have understood before." He traced the symbols with careful attention, feeling the faint pulse beneath his fingertips. The whisper swelled subtly, merging with the
rhythm of his heartbeat, and SpongeBob felt a profound realization settle into him. The secret formula had never been a formula in the conventional sense. It was a guide, a living embodiment of care and attention. Each act he had performed, the flipping of a patty, the laughter of a friend, the small kindnesses he had shared, had been part of a larger current, a network of subtle connections that shaped the world around him. Patrick watched in silent awe, sensing the depth of the moment even without understanding the specifics. "So, it's not really about the patties?" he asked, almost shyly. SpongeBob shook his head, smiling gently. "No, Pat. The patties were a way to show the care, to practice noticing, to feel the rhythm of giving and receiving. The secret was never in the recipe. It was in the way we lived, the way we touched the world, the way we connected with each other." As twilight descended, the water around them shimmered with muted shades of indigo and gold. SpongeBob tucked the final artifact into his notebook, aligning it with the others, and rose slowly, brushing sand from his hands. A deep calm filled him, an almost sacred resonance that threaded through his body and mind. The whisper receded slightly, patient and satisfied, confident that he had reached a new level of understanding. Patrick stretched beside him, the soft glow of lanternfish illuminating his features. "You look peaceful," he said. "I feel peaceful," SpongeBob replied. "And I think that's part of the formula too. The patience, the presence, the care, all of it matters. All of it is part of living with attention and love. That's the real magic." Together they began the slow journey back through the kelp-lined paths, the gentle currents carrying them forward, a reminder that the path itself was as meaningful as any destination. SpongeBob felt the whisper settle into a soft murmur, a comforting rhythm that he could carry with him into every day. The journey was far from over, he knew, but now he could move forward with trust, awareness, and a quiet understanding of the deep connections that threaded through all things. By the time they returned to the familiar streets of Bikini Bottom, the first stars of evening glimmered faintly through the water. SpongeBob paused for a moment, looking up at the diffuse light, letting the calm settle fully into him. He realized that the formula's secret was not hidden, not mysterious, but patient, waiting for those who could learn to see it in the small, careful gestures of everyday life. And in that quiet, shimmering twilight, he knew that he had begun to embody the lessons, not just understand them. Every smile, every patty flipped, every moment of care was now part of a greater rhythm he could feel within himself. A living, breathing melody of connection and love echoing softly beneath the waves. Patrick, sensing the quiet significance, nudged SpongeBob with a soft smile. "You're glowing," he said. SpongeBob laughed quietly, a sound like water over pebbles. "Maybe the ocean just likes me today," he said, and as the two friends walked home, guided by the gentle shimmer of the stars above and the calm pulse of the whisper within, SpongeBob felt a deep, unspoken gratitude for the journey, for the lessons, for the presence of a friend who had walked beside him through
it all.
He understood that there were more layers to discover, more currents to follow, and more moments of quiet revelation awaiting him beneath the calm surface of the ocean. The formula's secret, he realized, had always been alive, not hidden, not lost, but patiently waiting in the attention, love, and care woven into the rhythm of daily life. And somewhere beneath the serene shimmer of the sea, the whisper waited, guiding him gently forward, ready to reveal more when the heart was ready to receive it. The ocean had grown quieter now, a deep, calm lull settling over Bikini Bottom. The currents moved with a soft patience, carrying with them the faint shimmer of distant light, like memories reflected on the surface of a gently rippling pond. SpongeBob wandered slowly through the familiar streets, each step a deliberate act, each breath a quiet meditation. He had come to understand the rhythm of the whisper, the pulse that had guided him all this time, and now it felt less like an external voice and more like a reflection of the world inside him, a gentle reminder that the true secret lay not in discovery, but in presence. Patrick shuffled beside him, his soft humming blending with the faint rustle of kelp in the water. "It feels different today," he said, voice gentle. "Like everything's slower, but warmer." SpongeBob smiled, feeling the truth in Patrick's words.
"It is different," he whispered. "We've learned so much, Pat. Not just about the formula, not just about the artifacts, but about ourselves, about the way we touch the world, the way we care, the way we notice. All of that is the real magic."
The friends moved toward the northern cove, their path illuminated by the faint glow of bioluminescent plankton flickering softly against the kelp like stars scattered across the water. SpongeBob's notebook, filled with the artifacts and careful notes, rested against his chest. Each piece he had collected now felt less like an object and more like a companion, a part of the melody that had been unfolding for him all along. When they reached the familiar alcove, SpongeBob paused. The light fractured through the coral in shifting patterns, and he felt the whisper settle into a comforting, almost tangible warmth. He knelt, opening his notebook, and ran his fingers over the final artifact, the symbols etched with delicate precision. For the first time, he understood that the secret formula had never been something to possess. It was something to live, to reflect, to embody in the quiet moments of daily life. Patrick leaned closer, tilting his head as he always did when SpongeBob was deep in thought. "So, it's not just about the Krusty Krab?" he asked softly. "No," SpongeBob said, eyes soft, voice low and steady. "It's about everything. The laughter we share, the moments we care, the way we show up for each other, the attention we give to the little things. That's the real formula. That's what makes life bright, even in the quiet. The sun, now a muted golden glow through the water, painted long, gentle patterns on the sand." SpongeBob let his hand rest on the artifact, feeling the pulse that matched the rhythm of the whisper, a beat that resonated deep within him. He thought of the Krusty Krab, of customers smiling at simple kindnesses, of Squidward's rare, reluctant moments of understanding, and of Patrick, faithful, patient, unconditionally present. Every connection, every bond, every small act of care had built the foundation for this moment of clarity. He realized, with a soft exhale, that the journey had been as much about the relationships he nurtured as it had been about the discoveries themselves. Each bond, each laugh, each moment of listening and presence had been a thread woven into the larger tapestry, threads that connected him to the world in ways that were subtle, enduring, and profound. Patrick nudged him gently, sensing the weight of reflection. "So, what happens now?" he asked, voice curious but calm. SpongeBob looked up at the soft shimmer of light filtering through the kelp. "Now, we keep living it," he said. "We let the lessons guide us quietly, gently. We don't need to rush or search for more. The magic is in the way we move through each day, in the love we give, in the attention we pay." They sat together on the sand, the gentle sway of the kelp and the distant dance of jellyfish weaving a serene rhythm around them. SpongeBob traced patterns in the sand with his finger, watching them shift and fade as the currents moved. The whisper had receded to a soft hum, satisfied that he had understood what it needed him to see. The artifacts, the guidance, the small mysteries, they had all led him to this quiet comprehension that care, attention, and presence were themselves a secret of immeasurable value. Patrick yawned, stretching beside him. "I like this," he murmured. "It's calm, like—"
"Everything's okay. Yes," SpongeBob whispered, smiling faintly.
"Everything's okay. The journey matters, but so does the quiet after it. So does noticing the little things and being here now." The soft glow of evening deepened, casting the cove in muted blues and golds. SpongeBob felt a gentle exhale, a release of tension he hadn't even realized he had been holding. He had chased secrets, discovered artifacts, listened to whispers, and yet, in the end, the greatest revelation had been simple. Life was luminous in its quiet moments, radiant in small acts of love, and profoundly beautiful when experienced with attention and care. He looked at Patrick, his lifelong companion, through the laughter and the mysteries, and felt a warmth that transcended words. The whisper pulsed faintly in agreement, a quiet melody threading through the water, affirming the understanding that had taken him so many days to arrive at. The secret formula was not hidden, not distant. It was alive in the rhythm of care, in the attention to the present, in the love that wove through every connection. SpongeBob closed his notebook and tucked the artifacts carefully inside, smiling softly. "We've found it," he whispered, though not in triumph, but in reverent acknowledgement.
"The secret
"Has been with us all along," Patrick, still watching the water shimmer, nodded.
And it's nice," he said simply. "Yes," SpongeBob agreed, his voice a gentle lullaby in the quiet cove.
"It's perfect. The journey, the bonds, the quiet magic in everything.
That's what matters. And
Somewhere, the whisper will keep guiding us. Softly, patiently, as it always has, they rose together, moving slowly back toward the familiar streets of Bikini Bottom, the glow of the first stars twinkling faintly above them. SpongeBob felt the whisper settle comfortably within, a constant companion, a steady guide. He knew the journey of understanding was never truly over, but he was at peace, knowing that the secret had been within his reach all along, gently revealed through attention, care, and love. As the water around them darkened to a deep, soothing blue, SpongeBob exhaled, a quiet, full height. The formula's secret, he realized,
had always been alive, not hidden, not in a vault, not in a recipe.
but in the rhythm of living fully in the presence of friends, in the small acts that ripple outward in ways too subtle to measure but impossible to ignore. And in that peaceful evening, SpongeBob smiled faintly, thinking of all the laughter, the quiet moments, the whispers of the ocean, and Patrick by his side. He understood the depth of it all and felt the profound, gentle joy of being part of it. Somewhere beneath the calm shimmer of the ocean, the whisper waited, patient and gentle, ready to guide the next moments, the next layers of understanding whenever the heart was ready. And somewhere, SpongeBob knew, he and Patrick would continue to live it, day by day, laugh by laugh, act by act, attuned to the secret of care, that made everything luminous. Thanks for spending this time with us. Sleep well.
Everything's going to be okay, Mum.